President Biden there unveiling an even more aggressive plan to get all of America vaccinated. The Biden administration announcing that they will purchase an additional 200 million doses of the vaccine that will be available by this summer. 100 million from Pfizer, 100 million from Moderna. This would up the number of doses that the administration has purchased from 400 million to 600 million. Remember, every American needs 2 doses, so that would be more or less enough to vaccinate all Americans. The president there saying it will get worse before it gets better. This comes as the U.S. hits 25 million infections and counting. I want to bring in our Bloomberg healthcare reporter, Riley Griffin, who's been covering the mass vaccination effort and how well it is going. Riley, the president there said that the vaccine program was in even worse shape than they expected. What's your takeaway from the president's remarks?
Yeah, I was particularly struck by his comment of this being a wartime effort. The development to secure another 200 million doses comes amid heightened anxiety over the sluggish pace of the vaccine rollout and concerns over limited supply of doses. Remember, Operation Warp Speed, that U.S.-led effort to unite the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Defense, had an ambition to vaccinate 20 million people before the end of the year. With 20 million doses, so that first initial dose. And they did not achieve that measure. We've only recently hit that mark. President Joe Biden has pledged to administer 100 million shots in his first 100 days of office, though it wasn't immediately clear if the measures announced today on Tuesday would help him easily meet that goal. I think what we need to watch is that slope, that ramp up of how quickly the vaccine administering process continues from here on out, because 100 million doses is actually not too far from the plans that Operation Warp Speed had set out months ago. But this comes on the wake of other good news. We learned earlier today that Pfizer will be able to supply the U.S. with 200 million doses. Those 200 million have already been agreed for by the end of May, 2 months sooner than previously expected due to a label change that allows healthcare providers to extract an additional dose from each vial. So altogether, this is good news today. We're seeing supply flood the market and hopefully a ramp up in administering doses that would close that gap between the supply that's been distributed and that which has been administered into the arms of patients.
Well, as you point out, Riley, it's really short-term doses, additional doses that we also need. The Biden administration saying they're going to up the weekly delivery of doses to the states to 10 million. What are the holes you see in the president's plan? It's not just about getting the doses. It's about making sure the temperature is managed correctly from start to finish. There's no vaccine for children yet. Can he really vaccinate all of America by the summer?
Yeah, that's a great question. The childhood vaccination plan is underway. The problem is that data won't read out until summer. There's a real question of whether or not you can reach herd immunity without getting adolescents and especially teenagers immunized against COVID-19. Delivering 10 million doses to states in the interim would represent a 16% increase from the current weekly pace, though the higher pace may only last a couple of weeks. One thing I want to flag you on is that Johnson & Johnson, another vaccine maker that is developing a one-dose vaccine that might ease some of the logistical strain posed by Pfizer and Moderna's 2-shot vaccines, they're actually poised to read out data within coming days. If that vaccine looks efficacious, we could move forward with the authorization process and actually see J&J's doses flood the market come March. That was not discussed during the president's briefing today. He's not accounting for that when he cites 600 million doses, but that would be a real boon to this supply question if J&J came in, entered the market with additional supply, and provided ease of distribution administration by having a one-dose shot that doesn't require the cold chain requirements needed from Pfizer and Moderna, which, need a little bit. Pfizer requires that subarctic temperatures to be able to transport its vials. Here with J&J, you can just store it in the refrigerator. So that's really important.
All right, Riley, appreciate your detailed analysis of what's going on here. You know more about this than just about anyone, so thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Riley Griffin, our healthcare reporter. We're going to get to more later in the show on how the tech sector fared today, but I do want to hit Microsoft earnings out after the bell, and if there was any market reaction on the back of the president's remarks. We've got Kriti Gupta with us. Kriti, did you see anything moving as the president was speaking?
I don't believe so, Emily. A lot of that excitement is still coming off those earnings story. Microsoft in particular getting a good chunk of the action, 17% of sales beat driven by cloud computing. You can see right on the screen, Microsoft doing extremely well, 4% gains in the post market. Looking at some of the other sectors as well, or some of the other names I should say, Advanced Micro Devices, better known as AMD, shares actually down even though it did beat estimates across the board with an upbeat forecast on its chip demand. In the same vein, Texas Instruments also a big strong beat, projecting strong industrial and auto demand, but giving a bullish forecast for the current quarter. Nevertheless, you see both of those stocks down in the red. Flip up the boards and we'll flick ahead to tomorrow's earnings. Apple and Tesla both reporting. You can see in line with those big tech gains, Microsoft really leading the charge. You can see those two names trading in sympathy. I also want to bring to your attention Gamestop, which is surging another 67% in the post-market after doubling its value in regular trading. Emily, that stock story still ongoing. This time, however, those post-market gains driven by a tweet from Elon Musk, tweeting a link to the Reddit chain with the caption, just one word, Emily, game stonk, exclamation point. You're also seeing similar moves in AMC, that retail bid very much well and alive. Flip up the boards and we'll just hit what happened during the market session. Really see those stay-at-home names take a back seat after several days of that defensive trade really leading. It really tells you that some of those names, some of the kind of go-to trade in 2020 may be losing some of that steam in 2021. Emily.
All right, Kriti Gupta, who knew the word game stonk could carry so much weight? Kriti, thank you so much for that roundup. All right, coming up, President Biden is unleashing climate change orders at a rapid clip, in addition to his massive vaccination plan. I'm going to sit down with California's Secretary of Environmental Protection on what this means for the country's most populous state and our planet. That is next. This is Bloomberg. President Biden is due to deliver sweeping executive action on climate change tomorrow in what is anticipated to be one of the most expansive presidential agendas on climate to date. Earlier, I spoke with California's Secretary for Environmental Protection, Jared Blumenfeld, and got his take on Biden's latest climate initiative, what it means for California.
I mean, it's just amazing what a difference a week makes. I mean, literally, we were still bringing lawsuits against the Trump administration the day before the inauguration. So, it is such a huge welcome change. And I think it kind of deserves a second to just realize how important it is to tackle this issue head on. And day one, executive orders, Biden came out and rejoined the Paris Agreement, looked back at about 100 environmental regulations across the board and said, we really need to set the record straight. We need science to dictate what we're doing, and we need to move forward aggressively. And so it's one of his 4 pillars with tackling the pandemic, economic recovery, equity, and climate change. So this is a big deal. I mean, it's a really big deal. And we're just thrilled that the Biden administration is taking this so seriously.
Where did the Trump administration actually leave us when it comes to U.S. climate policy?
So, Emily, I mean, they completely left us. I mean, they left us at a place where our policies are in tatters. Many of those have been litigated, are in the courts, but internationally, we really dropped the ball. We were the only country that pulled out of Paris. So 190 other countries are forging ahead and really looking at how to tackle this. And really, it's been an economic opportunity lost. When you look at electric vehicles, when you look at production of renewable energy from solar to wind, when you look at energy efficiency, this is an opportunity to win. And really where we were left at a place that we have to pick up the pieces and move forward. There's a lot of damage that's been done to the system, and the institutions like Environmental Protection Agency, really has been left in tatters. So a lot needs to be done to rebuild.
Now, you and I live in California, where we're threatened by unseasonable wildfires, irregular weather, now regularly. What are your biggest concerns? What are the biggest climate threats to the planet right now?
So, Emily, I think we all thought that the impacts of climate change would be decades away, right? What we're seeing here in California is our agency alone just spent $2.5 billion cleaning up from last year's wildfires. We're back in cleaning up another whole season of wildfires. And what we found is that the cost of not taking action on climate change is incredibly high. Namely, if we don't take action, we in California are showing the rest of the world and the nation how much it's going to cost. So for us, big things we need to tackle are transportation. So we need to get ourselves off fossil fuel and move towards electric vehicles. Governor Newsom put an executive order forward saying all new passenger vehicles sold in California need to be electric by 2035. We need to deal with energy, the energy sector, and Biden's been very bold in this area and said by 2035 we need to get to carbon neutral energy. So namely get off fossil fuels like coal and gas and 100% renewables. We need to deal with how we heat our homes and our buildings. And California, 40 cities have led already and said all new buildings need to be plugged and built for zero emissions. So California has kind of led the way. We've had Republican governors like Schwarzenegger, then we had Jerry Brown, and now we have Gavin Newsom. So 3 governors in a row have been pushing for hard climate action year after year after year, unlike the federal level where kind of the pendulum swings back and forth. And what we found, Emily, is that economic development in the state has really been tied to these new innovative businesses, whether it's solar or electric vehicles. It's the way to go, and we're excited that the rest of the nation wants to join in.
Well, a company like Tesla, which is, of course, far and away the leader in electric cars and a huge part of helping the world reduce emissions. Elon Musk built their latest plant in Texas. He's moved there himself. He's complained about California policy. How concerning is that? And how important is it to fight to keep Tesla with a home base in California?
So we have a good relationship with Tesla. There's also 34 other electric vehicle manufacturers in the state. So Tesla's obviously the biggest, but 34 other companies have moved to California saying they want to build vehicles here. And then we have 62 manufacturers of parts for electric vehicles in the state. So Tesla just is building their new battery facility in Fremont next to their facility there. So, you know, Tesla, I think, is going to become a global company, is a global company. They're going to have facilities outside California as well, but we maintain very strong goal to work with Tesla and all the other facilities and companies that want to build in California. Emily, our number one export from California now is electric vehicles to the rest of the world. So incredible that it's really got to the level that it's material in terms of our economic recovery.
Jared Blumenfeld there, California Secretary for Environmental Protection. You can catch that full interview at Bloomberg.com. All right, coming up, Microsoft shares jump in late trading after sales top projection and cloud demand soars. As we continue to work from home, we will break down the results next. This is Bloomberg. All right, to today's tech results, Microsoft saying its second quarter sales rose 17%, a faster clip than analysts had projected. That thanks to buoyant demand for corporate cloud services and software that supports all at-home workers. Shares soaring in late trading. I want to bring Anurag Rana of Bloomberg Intelligence for more. So, Anurag, I guess the big question is, does all of this demand for Microsoft keep up even as work from home subsides, especially now that we're looking at a massive vaccine effort by the United States?
I mean, I personally think it is not that much to do with work from home. I think it is more driven by a recovery in overall tech spending because, you know, cloud growth accelerated. We haven't seen that in a long while. I mean, the work from home trade for Microsoft was just PCs, frankly. And we also saw that the decline in corporate PCs was a bit better this time. So I think this is more a reflection of improving sentiment across the board, higher enterprise spending, and less so some, a work from home trade.
Rivals are trying to keep up with the success of Microsoft Teams. We saw Salesforce buying Slack in the biggest tech deal of the year in 2020. Where do you see the biggest competition to Microsoft's offerings at this point?
See, in each of the areas that they operate, they have competition in across the board. It's not that, like, for example, even in cloud infrastructure services, they are much smaller than Amazon Web Services. In their Dynamics products, they are not as strong as Salesforce is in cloud enterprise cloud applications. So from that point of view, it's not as if they have a free pass in games, but execution's been very good. I think what really is working in Microsoft's favor right now is that the next leg of cloud spending is coming from enterprises, not so much from startups. And those companies are the ones that are, we think, more prone to go with Microsoft than either Google or Amazon, because Microsoft has a much older relationship with them and they're already using older Microsoft products.
Well, it's certainly interesting to see that trend, which won't only support Microsoft, but other big tech companies to come. We're going to be covering Apple, Facebook, Google also coming out later this week. I want to get your quick thoughts on this GameStop story. The shares just rocketing, this tweet from Elon Musk. What's your take on this? Has anything actually changed about GameStop's fundamentals?
No, I think this is a classic more of a trading issue than anything else. The company has a very large short interest, and when you start to see the stocks go up, you'll see people will go out and cover their names, and that drives the stock even higher. This is, as I said, a classic trading problem rather than fundamentals. And we really want to see what happens to other high short interest stocks, and we'll see what is the next GameStop now. Which companies do these retail traders target next, and what happens with that?
So what does this tell you about what's going on more broadly in the markets? Are investors skittish right now? We've had certainly a lot of change in the political climate, but seemingly towards more calm.
I think the thing that we have observed, at least in the past 7-8 months, is that the retail trader has become far more stronger, or far more, you could say, impactful on the overall returns, both through option activities as well as, a lot of trading that happens during the day. And I think we never used to say that retail investors didn't have that much of an impact on the overall market a few years ago, but that's no longer the case now. Last 6, 7, 8 months have shown us that people sitting at home and trading are having quite a bit of impact on overall stock returns for some of these thinly traded stocks, or not so, or for that matter, some of the popular stocks, just like Tesla.
All right. Anurag Rana of Bloomberg Intelligence. We're going to continue to watch this incredible story, an incredible rise. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, coming up, California Governor Gavin Newsom's seat under fire with a recall effort that is gaining momentum. I'm going to speak with Kraft Ventures co-founder and general partner David Sachs about why he is supporting the movement next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco, talking now about a recall effort underway to remove California Governor Gavin Newsom from office. Critics citing mismanagement of rising costs, wildfires, and the governor's approach to the pandemic. Supporters of the recall say they now have 1.2 million of the 1.5 million votes needed to remove him. Chamath Palihapitiya. Meantime, Newsom's competitor has detailed his potential run for governor, promising things like no student loans, no state income tax. With me now, a vocal backer of the recall effort, Kraft Ventures co-founder and general partner David Sachs, also the former COO of PayPal, founder of Yammer, a longtime tech investor and entrepreneur. David, thank you so much for joining us. You supported Governor Newsom's run 2 years ago. Why are you calling for him to be recalled now?
Well, Emily, I mean, California today is not doing very well compared to other states. We have the highest poverty rate in the country. We have the highest unemployment in the country. We have the most homelessness. We have the worst income inequality. We have the worst air quality because of poor fire management. And we have the second worst education outcomes in the US. We're ahead only of Alaska. Crime is exploding due to lax enforcement, failures to prosecute. And on top of all of that, we have the highest tax rates and most burdensome regulations in the country. And that is driving successful business innovators and entrepreneurs out of the state. We saw Elon Musk go to Texas, perhaps the most important entrepreneur of our generation, and losing these types of companies is going to haunt California for generations. And I think people are really feeling it in recent polls. 53% of Californians said they are thinking of leaving the state. And maybe even worse, 63% of Californians believe the American dream is dead here. And so I just think it's time to reappraise and take stock of where we are and make some changes.
So the governor's lockdowns have been especially controversial. His people, though, are saying this recall efforts is a waste of taxpayer money. I mean, how do you think the governor should have handled the pandemic differently?
Well, I'm glad that the governor now has finally ended the shelter in place, but it took far too long, and the thrashing around it was a disaster for small businesses. I mean, small businesses were told that they could safely operate outdoors, which is true, but then they were closed down after they made a bunch of expensive modifications, and now we're thrashing back to opening back up. We should never have thrashed around this way. You know, it was one thing to do lockdowns back in April or May of last year when the virus was still new. We didn't have all the data, but we now have data from a bunch of other states showing that states that have done less severe lockdowns have not done worse with the virus. And so we could have had, I think, much better policies. And the governor, I think, stubbornly refused to make changes. It took way too long. I think he's also been overly deferential to the teachers' unions as opposed to scientists on school reopenings. I think our most vulnerable students are falling massively behind. And frankly, we've had the lockdown rules have been completely random. I mean, if you're politically connected like the movie industry, you're deemed essential. But if you're working class, you're non-essential. Well, you know, in my book, I don't think anyone putting the food on the table for their family is non-essential.
I spoke with San Francisco Mayor London Breed last week, and to be fair, she's had her disagreements with the governor, but doesn't support the recall. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Well, my response is, do I think the governor should be recalled? No. Do I think that he's doing a good job in trying to manage this crisis in California? Yes. And we are working closely with him to do that. We have hard decisions to make, and our economy is suffering, but we also have to think about the lives that we are here to save as the priority, even though we know this is going to be a tough road ahead for our city and our state, but we're doing the best we can.
Now, David, even epidemiologists, some of them, are saying the state reopened too quickly last year. Are they wrong? And why, if they're wrong, are you right?
Well, I think that if you listen to most scientists, they've changed their minds about lockdowns, including the WHO changed its mind about lockdowns. First, they thought it was the right way to go. Then they realized that it's not the most, that the benefit cost isn't worth it. It doesn't necessarily slow down the virus that much. We've seen other states like Florida and Texas are doing better than California right now, despite not being locked down. And so I think there was a range of point of views on lockdowns that were fine to take, 8-9 months ago. But I think now with all the data we have, it was clearly the wrong approach and we should have adjusted sooner. I don't blame anyone for getting things wrong early in the pandemic, because there's so much we didn't know about this virus and we still don't know. But the question is, what is the rate of learning and are we adapting to new facts on the ground?
So let's talk about the horse you're backing. Why do you think Chamath Palihapitiya is the answer?
Well, so, I'm supporting Chamath because, first of all, he's a friend of mine. He's a very successful figure in the tech industry. But, one of the things that really impresses me about Chamath is, he grew up on welfare. He was dirt poor. He became successful in business. He understands both how business works, also how to make California successful, but he also has a lot of empathy and knows how to take care of the less fortunate. He's a Democrat who's donated a lot of money to the party. But he's a centrist Democrat, and I think he'll put the people first instead of special interests. He's not beholden to any special interests. And, I'm more of a centrist Republican, and I can say wholeheartedly that I support Chamath for governor. I think he's got a great platform that will revitalize California. And, I think right now there's a risk that people will just give in to cynicism and resignation, but we can do something about this. We just have to act.
So he is, as you say, a very successful investor. He used to work at Facebook, then became very critical of Facebook. But he's making really big promises here. No state income tax, kids being able to choose whatever school they want to go to, no student loans. The math repeatedly shows that tax cuts don't pay for him themselves. So how can he deliver on all these promises?
Well, Emily, California is in a very competitive environment right now. We're seeing that entrepreneurs are flocking to states like Florida and Texas. Miami and Austin in particular are becoming tech hubs to rival the Bay Area. And unless we start realizing as a state that we're in a highly competitive environment, we're going to lose this competition. You heard Elon Musk say that California has been winning for too long, that maybe it's starting to take for granted its success. And so, I see Chamath's platform as the start of the conversation. It's maybe not the end, but these are the right types of conversations. These are the right types of issues that we need to be discussing. And what issues, frankly, is Governor Newsom discussing? He just seems totally beholden to special interests, and I haven't heard any policy proposals out of him on how to fix the situation.
I know some of your friends and former colleagues have moved to Miami. Have you had any thoughts about fleeing there as well?
So, I've recently spent some time in Miami, and it's really a great place, but I'm still committed to, making San Francisco and California my home base. I really don't want to leave. I really would like to see California improve and get better. And this is why I think we need to speak out. A lot of people saying, like, David, why are you even speaking out about this? Why are you taking risks? Maybe this could be bad for business. But I really think we just need that first little kid to go out and say the emperor wears no clothes. And I think everyone's going to realize it's pretty much true.
So the recall effort, though, is facing long odds. Republicans have tried this multiple times already. It has not worked. You need 1.5 million signatures, and you've got 1.2 million, but those signatures need to be certified. The reporting is that there are many business leaders like yourself behind this, but also followers of QAnon and other extremists. Will you have enough legitimate signatures to make this happen?
That sounds like such a bizarre comment for people to be making about the recall. First of all, I'm not organizing it. I merely signed the petition and donated to it. But we're already at 1.2 million signatures. We only need 1.5 million. And we're planning on having a substantial buffer. So we think we can get to 2 million so that when all the signatures get certified, it creates a buffer if there's any signatures that aren't valid. We're really on track for that right now. And if people want to sign, all they need to do is go to rescuecalifornia.org. So I tell everybody, go to rescuecalifornia.org. It's really easy. And then the other thing you should look at is go look at Chamath's platform and decide for yourself. He's created a website. It's called chamath4ca.com. chamath4ca.com.
Now, on another note, you've been very critical about the deplatforming of Donald Trump. Facebook suspending him indefinitely, Twitter permanently. What do you think a better solution is if the concerns are about inciting real-world violence?
Right. Well, what I've said, Emily, is, first of all, I don't miss Trump's tweets at all. That's not the point. The point about censorship is not just what views or people are you censoring. It's always about who has the power to censor. And right now, the issue I see is that big tech has all the power. There's a small cartel of tech monopolies who've gotten together on this issue, and they're dictating, who gets to participate in online speech. And it wasn't just Trump or his supporters. It was millions of Americans on apps like Parler that have been completely silenced and deplatformed. So Parler had 15 million users, 99% of whom never said anything wrong. And so, big tech here is really making all the decisions about what we get to see and read online and what we get to say. And they're even engaging now in a type of economic cancellation where people who don't have the right views are being denied access to critical online infrastructure for payments, for web hosting. And I just think this is a very dangerous trend. I just don't think big tech should be able to make these government-like decisions to deny people their civil rights without the American people having rights, an online bill of rights, if you will, to protect them.
Do you think Twitter and Facebook should let the president back on the platforms right now?
Well, I think there was an argument in the wake of January 6th. The initial argument for removing the president or his supporters was that there was incitement to violence. I understand that argument. While there's violence going on, clearly you take emergency actions. I think then the argument pivoted to, well, there could be disruptions to the peaceful transfer of power. And so that would be the argument, I think, for them suspending an account until January 20th. But now I'm not quite sure what the argument is exactly for denying any American permanently their free speech rights, especially when an entire cartel of big tech companies have done it. And so look, it's not specifically about Donald Trump. I don't miss the tweets at all, but I do wonder, what are our rights as Americans to free speech if we can be deplatformed by all the big tech companies?
So you've used the word monopolies, cartels, and I'm curious what action you think and hope the Biden administration will take on big tech. They're looking at not just Facebook, but Google, Apple, Amazon. Are these companies monopolies that you think should be broken up?
They're tremendously powerful, and I think breaking them up is something that should be on the table. I don't necessarily think all of them should be treated the same way, but yeah, I mean, these companies have become incredibly powerful, and when they get together and act in the same way with a single mindset, it can really deny people their civil rights. I've called this a speech cartel. So yeah, I mean, I think busting them up should certainly be on the table.
So what is your outlook for Silicon Valley and the markets in general under a new administration? You've been investing for a long time. I know you're out there placing your bets on trends that you think are taking off. What do you see in the future?
I mean, I think the outlook for tech is great. The truth of the matter is that innovation continues no matter which party is in power. This has been part of, I got into the tech industry in 1999. It's been over 20 years. And, there's always ups and downs along the way, but they're not really correlated with the political cycle. And, I'm tremendously bullish on tech. And frankly, it's more the rest of the country that I'm worried about, not the tech ecosystem.
What are you worried about?
Well, I mean, I think that what we've seen with COVID is that you certainly have some disparities that have gotten widened. I mean, let's face it, like big tech companies and even, some smaller tech companies in my portfolio, if you're in software as a service or you're in e-commerce, you've done great. But if you're a small business, you're a restaurant or some in retail or something like that, especially in the state of California, I mean, you've been absolutely devastated by these lockdowns. And I mean, you just look at the city of San Francisco, over 50% of the storefronts are closed. I mean, it's something out of like a dystopian movie or something. And so those are the people I really worry about. And I think we really need to do something about it. Big tech can't keep reacting with this icy indifference towards the rest of the country.
All right, David Sachs, really always interested to hear your remarks and the provocative arguments that you make. Craft Ventures co-founder and general partner will be following the recall effort and your success there. Much more coming up. Stay with us. More after this break. This is Bloomberg.
We'll soon be able to confirm the purchase of an additional 100 million doses for each of the two FDA-authorized vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna. 200 million more doses than the federal government had previously secured. Not in hand yet, but ordered. We expect these additional 200 million doses to be delivered this summer.
President Biden there delivering remarks about aggressive moves he is making to improve the nation's COVID vaccine campaign. Executives from across business sectors, travel to leisure, and big pharma weighed in on the vaccine rollout with some cautious optimism earlier on Bloomberg television and at events in Davos and our Year Ahead Summit. Take a listen.
By the middle part of this year, we'll get systems back to normal. The vaccination rollouts will continue, and we'll be able to then accelerate our growth in the back half of this year.
We're only safe when everybody's safe, and that's why At AstraZeneca, we decided to provide this vaccine to everybody around the world at no profit and as quickly as possible.
We have the tools that we will make COVID like flu. Means that will not disturb neither our lives, social, or the economy.
The light is at the end of the tunnel. We have a political cycle over with a new administration, an intense focus on getting us through the crisis in terms of what's going on with the rollout of vaccines.
We have some enhanced treatment protocols that most of 2020 we didn't have. We have much more testing availability and rapid testing and more accurate testing, which in most of 2020 we didn't. We have a much better understanding of the virus where in 2020 we didn't.
Executives there from Novartis, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Hilton, Carnival on Bloomberg Television at Davos and our Year Ahead Summit. We'll have much more from the year ahead throughout the week. All right, still ahead, Tesla poised to report its fourth quarter results, coming with high expectations. We'll have more details on what to expect next. This is Bloomberg. Apple earnings out Wednesday, and analysts expecting the company to report increases in both adjusted earnings per share and revenue. Apple has been on a tear in the work from home trend as pandemic demand for products and services has increased. The company's stock more than doubled since its annual low in early 2020. Bloomberg Tech will have the latest from the company and analysis from Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities. You do not want to miss that. Also reporting Wednesday, Tesla, which is expected to report its sixth consecutive quarterly profit and potentially its first $1 billion quarter. This after a remarkable year when Tesla's stock split and skyrocketed. The company joining the S&P 500 and almost hitting its delivery target of 500,000 cars. Joining us now to discuss, CFRA equity analyst Garrett Nelson. Garrett, what are you expecting in the numbers tomorrow?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Well, Tesla has beat consensus for each of the past 5 quarters. So the question is, can they make it 6? And we really like their odds here. The adjusted EPS estimate for the fourth quarter is $1.03, and that looks very achievable for a quarter in which the company posted record vehicle sales. So we know that they disclosed that earlier this month. So, but really all eyes are going to be on the 2021 vehicle sales guidance. The consensus is for a little under 800,000 units sold. That would be close to a 60% increase from 2020. And that's really going to be the focus, as well as their progress in completing construction of the new factories that they're building in Germany and just outside of Austin, Texas.
Well, let's talk about that. We were just speaking with David Sachs, who suggested that Elon Musk is perhaps the most important entrepreneur and is now leaving California. He said he's taking up residence in Austin. Could you see a future where Tesla, further diversifies outside of California and California loses Tesla as a company?
Yes, in fact, we think that's what's going to happen. Elon Musk had a run-in with the California government early on in the COVID pandemic, when their factory, the Fremont factory in California, accounts for about 70% of their annual auto production. So that factory was shut down for close to 2 months in 2020, and at that time, Musk threatened to leave the state, move the headquarters out of California, and we think that's their plan. They have a very large development there, just outside of Austin, with plenty of room for future growth.
So what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be? I mean, clearly Tesla is far and away the leader in electric cars. Demand is skyrocketing. Can they meet it?
Sure, that's the $64,000 question, I think. After a year in which Tesla stock rose by over 700%, it's like, how do you top that? What's next? How do you top that in 2021? And clearly expectations are very high. But they've managed to exceed those very lofty expectations over the last few quarters or so. So, it's a matter of Tesla growing into its valuation. It's a very lofty valuation. The biggest near-term challenge we see is that we expect some real bona fide competition to show up on the roads in the U.S. later this year from other EV upstarts such as Lucid and Rivian. Those companies will have electric vehicles on the road later this year with very competitive specs to the Tesla vehicles. And Tesla has really owned the EV market, close to 60% market share in the U.S. So it'll be interesting to see with this competition finally showing up, after years of people predicting this, how Tesla is able to maintain and potentially grow their market share from here. It should be a lot more challenging.
I'm surprised I didn't hear you mention any more traditional automakers there, given that Lucid and Rivian are also upstarts.
So they're coming. GM is shifting to an all-electric vehicle lineup. Ford has some vehicles that are coming as well. But the timing of those is a little bit later. Late this year, you'll start to see some models from GM and some from Ford show up. But it's really some of the startups that are going to have vehicles on the road soon.
Okay, Garrett Nelson of CFRA, thank you so much for your analysis there. We'll be following Tesla results tomorrow and your commentary as always. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia is coming up next. This is Bloomberg.